All right, let's jump right into one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. What's the real relationship between your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your entire sense of self, and that 3-pound chunk of tissue inside your head? Today, we're digging into a scientific idea so bold, it's literally called the astonishing hypothesis.
Most of us, if we're really honest, kind of feel this way. It just seems obvious, right? It feels like there's a you that's separate from your body, almost like you're a little pilot sitting inside your own head pulling the levers. It's exactly why stories about ghosts or body swapping make total sense to us. We just intuitively feel like we're the ghost in the machine. So this common sense view actually has a name. It's called dualism. It's the idea that the mental world and the physical world are two totally different things. But modern science has a completely different take on it called materialism. This view says there is no ghost. The mind isn't in the machine. The mind is what the machine does. The machine is the ghost.
And that brings us to what the famous scientist Francis Crick called the astonishing hypothesis. And believe me, it is astonishing. It's the idea that everything that makes you you, your deepest joys, your biggest fears, your ambitions, your very memories, is nothing more than the physical behavior of your brain cells. That's a huge claim. So what's the evidence?
Well, let's start with one of the most famous and, frankly, wildest cases in the entire history of neuroscience. It's a story that really challenges that whole ghost in the shell idea. Okay, so picture this. It's Vermont, 1848. A young, reliable railway foreman named Phineas Gage is doing his job, packing blasting powder into rock with a long iron rod. It's something he's probably done 1,000 times before. But on this one afternoon, something goes terribly wrong. A spark ignites the powder, and that 3-foot-long, 13-pound tamping iron shoots through his head like a rocket. It destroys a huge chunk of the front part of his brain. Now, the crazy part is, he survived. He was conscious and talking just minutes later. But the man who recovered, he wasn't the same Phineas Gage. The polite, dependable guy was gone. In his place was someone impulsive, disrespectful, and profane. His own friend said Gage was no longer Gage. And this is the whole point. This is the crucial takeaway from his story. The physical damage to his brain didn't just mess with his body, it changed his personality, his character, his self. It's powerful evidence that the stuff we tend to think of as our soul is tied directly to the physical matter in our heads.
So the story of Phineas Gage was a major blow to dualism. But the next one came from a totally different place, from the world of machines.
Let's rewind for a second to the philosopher René Descartes. He was a huge proponent of dualism, and he argued that a physical machine could never, ever truly think or be rational. It could only do simple, reflexive things. And, for the machines he was looking at, like clocks and fountains, he was totally right. But our idea of what a machine can do was about to change, big time.
I mean, Descartes couldn't possibly have imagined a machine playing chess. Today, a machine can beat the best human grandmaster on the entire planet. The point is, the fact that we humans can do complex, rational things is no longer proof that we need some kind of non-physical soul to do it. Our own creations have shown us that purely physical systems can be unbelievably smart. This whole shift in thinking is often called the cognitive revolution. It gave us this incredibly powerful new way to think about the brain. It's not just some weird lump of meat. It's an information processor. It takes in data, it computes, and it produces an output. It's basically a computer, just a biological one. Okay, but if the brain is a kind of computer, that leads to a really interesting question. Does it have bugs, predictable glitches in its software? Let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine a deadly disease has broken out and 600 people are infected. You're in charge, and you have to pick one of 2 treatments. Let's see how you'd handle this.
Now look at this really carefully. Some people are shown the options on the left, which are framed in terms of lives saved. Treatment A saves 200 people, guaranteed. Treatment B is a gamble. But other people see the options on the right, framed in terms of lives lost. Now wait a minute. Saving 200 out of 600 people is the exact same thing as 400 people dying. The options are mathematically identical, so our choices should be the same, right?
Yeah, not even close. When the choice is framed positively, as saving lives, 72% of people pick the safe option, treatment A. But when the exact same choice is framed negatively, as people will die, that number just plummets down to 22%. Our supposedly rational minds are totally swayed just by how you word the problem.
This is a famous cognitive bias known as the framing effect, and it's just one of many predictable bugs in our mental programming. You see, a perfect, rational, non-physical soul probably wouldn't fall for a simple trick like this. But a brain, a physical system that was shaped by evolution to take shortcuts and make quick decisions, it absolutely would. These biases are even more evidence that our mind is just the product of a physical process.
So when you start putting all these pieces together, the tragic case of Phineas Gage, the raw power of physical computers, and all these predictable little bugs in our own thinking, a whole new picture starts to form. Think about this for a second. The very act of you listening to and understanding this sentence is physically changing your brain right now. It has to. In order for you to remember this idea even 5 minutes from now, some kind of physical change has to happen in your neurons. If thought could happen without changing the brain, well, that would actually be proof of a non-physical mind. But all the evidence we have points the other way. You know, sometimes our old dualist thinking can lead to some pretty funny situations. The author of our source material points out that reading a headline like this makes you scratch your head. The brain may play a role in envy. May? Where else is it going to be? In your big toe? It's hilarious because it shows just how deep that idea of a separate mind runs, even when the truth is staring us right in the face. So here's the final conclusion, and it's as profound as it is simple. We aren't ghosts piloting a machine. The mind isn't some separate thing that lives in the brain. The mind is just the word we use for what the brain does. We aren't driving the machine. We are the machine. A really complex, biological, and truly astonishing machine. But, and this is a big but, accepting this astonishing hypothesis doesn't end the mystery. Not at all. In fact, it kind of leads to an even deeper one. If our mind is just our brain at work, then how on earth does this physical organ, this lump of meat and electricity, create conscious experience itself? How does it generate the feeling of seeing the color red, or the taste of coffee, or just the raw sensation of being you? That is one of the greatest unsolved questions in all of science.